Hello, everybody. Lar Ryan from Complete Test Success here. Welcome to another live stream. Today we are looking at, we're doing a Q&A. Today we're doing a Q&A. So the premise is pretty simple. You ask questions and I answer them. So any questions you have about the IELTS test, any problems you're having, if you want to describe the experiences you're having and the problems you're having, I'll give you advice how to overcome those problems. If you have questions about things you don't understand, or basically any issues that you're having, any questions that you have, just let me know and I'll be happy to answer those questions for you. And that's pretty much what we're doing today. Norlanto, hello to you. Welcome. You got in good and early. Okay. That's pretty much it. Well, I'm waiting for the first questions to come in. Let me share my free live feedback lessons with you guys. So these are free lessons that I do on Zoom each week. And in those lessons, we cover the various parts of the IELTS test. So reading, writing, listening, speaking, writing part 1, writing task 1, writing task 2, general training, everything. We cover everything. So, yep, if you want to join me on Zoom for those free live feedback lessons, click on that link there and you can sign up. Zenitsu, hello to you. Welcome. Welcome to the lesson. Okay, so that's it. Let me hear your questions and I'll be able to answer them for you right now. Zenitsu, first question. How should I evaluate my essay and improve my writing skills when I can't get feedback from a professional teacher? So basically, your ideas for task achievement need to be relevant and they need to be specific. And some people just aren't good at analyzing ideas in that way. So, you might have ideas and you don't know if they're okay. You could ask a friend, ask a family member who's good with that type of thing. So, they don't even need to speak English. They just, the idea will be relevant in any language. The idea will be specific in any language. So it might be that you want to get somebody to check those for you, to check if your ideas are okay. Then for grammar and vocab, you can use software. There's like Grammarly is great for correcting vocab and grammar mistakes, spelling, grammar mistakes, things like that. You won't really get a very good sense of what scores you're capable of, but you'll definitely get a sense of what things you're doing wrong and what things you can do to improve. So, if you need to improve your scores, or if you're looking to find areas that you want to work on, those would be ways to do that. Yeah, so those would be things. I think ultimately, though, getting advice from an IELTS expert will show you exactly what scores you're getting and show you what areas you need to improve on. So, like with grammar, you'll always find some grammar mistakes that you can improve, but it doesn't mean that that's the best thing for you to work on. So, maybe the main issue is pronunciation. Well, you're talking about writing. So let's say maybe your main issue is coherence and cohesion, but you don't know that. All you know is that there are some grammar mistakes you can work on. So you might be working on areas that aren't affecting your score as much. So generally the way it works is, to go from a band 6 to a band 7 in any band score is easier than going from a band 7 to a band 8 in any band score. So typically you want to work on your weakest areas as well. Hi, Cece. I'd like to ask, what should I do as I speak very slowly? I'm not a fast speaker in my native language, and I also need time to think about vocabulary and grammar. So that's just a vocab problem. That's just a fluency problem. You need to practice speaking in English more often. There's nothing else you really need to do. Anything you do in English will help your fluency. So, if you're reading in English, listening in English, watching TV programs, everything, getting your brain working in English, that all helps. But nothing is going to help as much as, speaking in English more often. A very common mistake, well, not mistake, maybe a common misunderstanding that students have is that they think they need a speaking partner. So when I tell them they need to speak more often, they say, but I don't have a speaking partner. It doesn't matter. You don't need one. If you're speaking by yourself and nobody's listening, you're still going to improve your fluency. I would just say, make sure that you're practicing, make sure that you're discussing topics that you're not very comfortable with. Make sure you're discussing topics that you're not very familiar with. So if you only discuss, your family, your hobbies, your hometown, things like that all the time, you're not really challenging yourself very much. And that will stop you from improving as fast as you could, as if you were talking about topics that you don't know as much about. So maybe talking about the environment, talking about social problems or whatever it is. So you can practice by yourself, you can improve by yourself, but I would say discuss challenging topics. Don't just discuss easy topics all the time. You should be pushing yourself, and that will help you to improve more quickly. Hi, Ash. Sir, now I got band 7 in speaking because my speaking band score. Oh, sorry, how to get band 7 in speaking because my speaking is stuck at 6.5. So it depends what mistakes you're making. It's like this, right? So there are 4 band scores: fluency, vocab, grammar, pronunciation. Now, if you've already got a 6.5, that means that at least 2 of those bands are 7s. So you got at least 2 7s and then 2 6s so far already. You might be getting 3 7s already and 1 6. So what we need to do is find out how many 6s are you getting? Are you getting 1 or are you getting 2? And also, what areas are you getting 6s in? So you need to bring those 6s up to a 7. So it might be, we don't know, like just looking at your comment, your message here, I have no way of knowing what areas you're having problems with. But it's about finding out which areas you're making mistakes in, and then focusing on improving those areas. That's what I do with the students on my course is, I'll do a practice speaking test with them. And a practice speaking test is good. It's good to get familiar with the process. But more importantly, I can tell my students what they're doing wrong. So it'd be like, these 2 grammar mistakes and, this 1 pronunciation mistake. Those are the 3 things that you need to do. And then I'll show them how to do it, and they go and take care of that problem. So, getting somebody to show you what your mistakes are makes the process a lot easier and makes your study time more effective as well. Humayun, how do I get an 8 in speaking? So like I was just talking about with Arsh, you need to get 8 in fluency and vocab and grammar and pronunciation. You need to get band 8 in everything. It's very, very high score. It's like you can be excellent at speaking English and you're not a band 8. Like a band 8 is such a high standard. I think a lot of people, before they do the IELTS test, they don't understand how high a band 7 is. Band 7 is a very, very, very strong ability to speak in English. Like a band 7, you would never be stuck. You'd never have problem communicating about any topic. But with a band 8, it's getting to the point where, if I'm speaking with someone who's a band 8, you barely notice that they're not speaking their first language. A band 8 is pretty much at the level of a native English speaker. So, like how many years can you dedicate to it? What level are you already? And like I said to Arsh, finding out what are your band scores in each band and working on improving those areas, that's exactly what you need to do. Shaunak, how to work on lexical resource? Yeah, good question. So I think there are a few mistakes that students make when they're studying vocab. One is they don't learn collocations. So they'll just learn individual words and they won't learn, what preposition goes with that word, or, what verb goes with that noun, and, like the collocations. So a lot of students, they just learn one word at a time instead of learning phrases and collocations. And that's problematic then, because when you go to use them in writing and in speaking, if you haven't learned the collocations, well, then now you have to guess. And if you're guessing which preposition to use, there's a good chance you're going to be wrong. So that's really important. That's really, really important, is to learn collocations. And then when you do it that way, you're more likely to use them with grammatical accuracy as well. I think another problem that students have is they try to learn what they think is impressive or like high level vocab, but it doesn't make sense. You know, like if your standard is here, sorry, that wasn't straight. Like if your standard is here, you don't want to start picking words that are way above your standard. You want to build up on top of your current level. So like, I think the second mistake I see is students, they're not happy to learn the easy basic words. They don't want to learn basic words. They want to learn fancy words because they think that's impressive. But you need the foundation, like all the basic words, you need those first. So what happens to some students is they're not happy to learn what they think is easy words. They're not happy to focus time, to dedicate time on words that they don't think are impressive. Then the final most common mistake I see is people that have a vocab notebook full of very useful vocabulary, but they won't actually go and review the words. So they have a notebook which is full of great words, and it would be brilliant if they knew them, but they find that really boring because you have to go to your notebook and repeat again every day, looking at the same words again and again and again, and it's incredibly boring. I understand why people don't want to do it, but the reality is if you're learning vocabulary, it's no good having a great notebook. It needs to be in your head. So those would be the three main problems that I'd recommend you avoid. Yeah. Curti, perhaps ChatGPT could be helpful. So this is for the student earlier who's asking about how to evaluate essays, I'd imagine. I'd imagine this is responding to Zenitsu's. Yep, ChatGPT is good. I made a video on ChatGPT and pointing out a few different ways. One thing you can do with ChatGPT as well is to help you learn vocab, where like if there are particular topics that you're not good with. So let's say like you find whenever you need to discuss the environment that it's really challenging for you. So you can ask ChatGPT to recommend like what type of vocab would be good to learn for discussing the environment. So you can get ChatGPT to give you lists of words like that as well. But like I said in my you might have seen that video that I made about ChatGPT, but basically it'll give you a list of words and definitions, but no collocations. So what I did with ChatGPT was asked it, can you now put those words in context for me? So then they use the words in sentences, and you get some really good insight into, what preposition is used, how is it used, where does it fit into the sentence, what other collocations go with that word. So I would just recommend that extra step. Ask ChatGPT to put the words in context, because just word definition, that's not the best way to learn vocab. Sammy Gray, I got my desired score. Fantastic. Thank you, sir. Speaking 8.5, listening 9, writing 8, reading 8.5. Brilliant. That's fantastic. Well done, Sammy. Delighted to hear that. And Nerd Guy. Writing task 2, lexical resource problem, how to deal with it. You just need to learn vocab. There's no special thing you should do because it's task 2. If your vocab isn't good enough to get the reading score you need, or if your vocab isn't good enough to get the listening score you need, or your vocab isn't good enough to get the speaking score or the writing score you need, those aren't different problems. That's one problem. That's your vocab isn't good enough, and you just need to stay studying vocab. You can focus on topics that you're less familiar with. You can focus on topics that you struggle with, but ultimately you need to sit down. You need to find new words. You need to make notes. You need to review that notebook over and over and over again. So that essentially, there's no other way around it. Okay. ISI 4, I don't understand writing. Can you give me more information? Can you explain to me in more detail what that problem is? I can't really give you feedback because it's just a very broad like writing. There could be a lot of different possible problems within that. So if you can explain your problem in more detail, I'll have more advice for you there. What sort of grammar structures do I need to use in a body paragraph? There are no particular grammar structures. Like the grammar that you need to use will depend on the information that you're communicating. So we don't think about, okay, body paragraph task 2, you need this grammar. Grammar doesn't work like that. You know, like the tenses depend on when the event happened, what you're describing. The prepositions depend on what other words are being used next to them. You know, the structure depends on what you started your sentence with, like, is it passive or is it active? Are you using a cohesive device that will dictate what grammar structure you need? So it's not just as simple as body paragraphs need this grammar. So just from reading your comment, it sounds like you don't really have a deep understanding of how grammar works. So instead of focusing on, and this is what I said to you about vocab, instead of focusing on vocab for task 2, you just study vocab. And in the same, you're not studying grammar for task 2, you need to study grammar more generally. So with grammar, what you can do is find out what your typical mistakes are. What types of mistakes are you making? Where are you going wrong? Where do you typically have errors? So, you know, is it always articles? Is it always complex structures? Is it always with prepositions? Or where are you going wrong? And once you know where you're going wrong, you can just be very focused on fixing that one mistake. So that would be the main thing. What's the main difference between an 8 holder and a 9 holder in speaking? So, I mean, a native speaker, and not every native English speaker would be able to get a band 9. You know, like if there's somebody, like let's say somebody who dropped out of school early, like somebody who didn't finish school, who wasn't able to finish school, like academically, you know, they wouldn't always necessarily have a band 9 level in speaking. You know, there are some people who are native English speakers and they'll make grammar mistakes, or, you know, they don't fully understand what language they're using to describe what they're saying. So it's not just even being a native English speaker. It's been, you know, somebody who would be who would have completed their education. So just consider, you know, the difference between somebody who's mastered the language and who's what we would consider completely fluent, versus somebody who in your own language, like comparing a band 9 in your own language being, you know, somebody who has mastered the language beyond what's really necessary. You know, somebody who reads a lot, somebody who would do a lot of writing, somebody who you know, is more engaged in the language. That's a band 9. So, you know, the difference between being fantastic in a second language and how good you are in your first language, basically that. What kind of performance does an IELTS examiner want to see in a band 9? Well, it's just the flexibility to have the language that you need and the language coming to you. You know, having the intonation to communicate extra meaning beyond the words that you're saying. Being able to develop your answers in detail, just like a native level speaker. So, I mean, it's in the band descriptors as well, but there is a significant difference between an 8 and a 9. An 8 is fantastic, but 9 is just, you know, beyond that. Hey, Domenico, good to see you here. Salima, hello, sir. My writing score is 6.5. How can I improve it? Should I read and analyze more sample essays? Sample essays are good for helping you understand how to organize answers. So it depends, like, why are you scoring 6.5 and what are you trying to improve by looking at sample essays? Like looking at sample essays, they're good to figure out how to write an essay. But if your problem is vocab, you should be learning vocab. If your problem is grammar, you should be studying grammar. So it just depends on where you are, what your situation is, what problems you're having. Again, like I said, like when students join my course or when students get an essay correction from me, I'll be able to show them exactly like these are the 3 things you're doing wrong. This is how you fix them, and then go and do it. So sample essays, they're useful, but it depends what you're trying to fix. You know, if you have a problem that isn't being fixed by reading sample essays, then no. But again, I'm not sure exactly what you're trying to do, what you're trying to improve by reading those sample essays. So it's hard for me to say whether it will or will help you. But you know, how you can improve with sample essays, like their effects are limited. They won't fix everything. So, you know, if your ideas are irrelevant, you need to practice developing ideas. You need to practice planning essays. So it just depends on what your problem is, really. When I talk to someone that time, I feel nervous. How can I overcome this? That's your personality. That's your personality. This is kind of the one area that I don't really have a good answer for. Is like, how can you stop being nervous? I mean, I get nervous when I'm out in public, when I'm talking to groups of people that I don't know, if I'm doing a job interview. So, you know, that's your personality. That's kind of who you are. I think trying not to fight it can be helpful. You know, like if you're in a stressful situation and you feel stressed, that's pretty normal. But if you're trying to tell yourself like, I shouldn't be nervous, stop being nervous, don't be nervous, it's like extra pressure that you're putting on yourself. I think you're just going to have to allow yourself to be nervous and do the best you can in that situation. But the thing is, somebody who's scoring band 7 in the IELTS speaking test, they're not scoring band 7 because they're not nervous. You know, those people are also nervous. Most people are very nervous in the IELTS test. So, you know, it doesn't mean you can't get a good score if you're nervous. Like, most people are very nervous. I would focus more on finding your weaknesses in relation to fluency, vocab, grammar, pronunciation, and fixing those problems, and allowing yourself to be nervous, because you will, and most people are. And it's not a reason to, you know, it's not a reason to say like, you know, I can't get a good score because I'm nervous. Everybody's having the same experience as you. So try to focus on what you can improve is what I would recommend. Samples, no sound. I think it should be okay. I'll usually get an internet warning, a low signal warning when that happens. So I think it should be okay on my end. How to understand the task 2 statement and create good ideas. If you can't understand the question, it's normally a vocabulary problem. And there's nothing you can do except improve your vocabulary to the point that you can understand the question. And it's almost impossible to get a good score if you don't understand the question. You know, you can't answer a question if you don't understand it. So that has to be the first step. And, you know, if you're talking about creating good ideas, well, if you don't understand the question, you can't. So I would recommend that you just focus on improving your vocab. And when you understand the question, then creating good ideas will become more realistic, because, you know, maybe your ideas aren't good because you don't understand the question. The second problem is a result of the first one, based on what you're saying here. Hello? Sanitsu, I can't remember words when I'm writing whilst I understand them if I see. How should I fix this? That's normal. Everybody will be in the same situation. Everybody has vocab they understand that they can't use properly, not just in English, but in your first language as well. You just need to continue studying vocab, continue reviewing vocab. Like, it will come to you eventually, but every word that you can use now was once like that you could understand it, but you couldn't use it. And then just over time, continue improving and working on improving. And after time, your brain is just naturally ready to use it. So just stay studying vocab. There's no other real solution to that. Adil, hello, sir. If we have 3 or 4 times repetition of 2 or 3 words and they are used accurately, to what extent will it affect our bands for lexical resource? There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with reusing words. If it's the main word, if you're writing an essay about, say, for example, if you're writing an essay about tourism, you're going to have to use that word several times in your essay, like tourism and tourists. So you're not expected to have each word only once in your essay or anything like that. It's no problem to reuse words. That's a normal thing to happen. It's not, you're not going to be penalized. It's completely okay. Domenico, sir, I'm gearing up for the 1-week trip to Dublin. Very good. With all that being said, I've realized that based on the scores that I've received in reading and writing and listening, I'm nearly ripe for the test. Good. You're getting there, Domenico. Glad to hear it. What can I do for 9 bands in writing task? I've only 1 day left for preparation. I wouldn't worry too much about improving vocab and grammar. What I would do is, at this point, probably just make sure you can finish your essays in 60 minutes. So can you write a task 1 and a task 2 essay in 60 minutes? Practice that. Just make sure that you have the time management down. You're not going to improve your vocab. You're not going to improve your grammar in 1 day, but just make sure that you got the timing down. And also, don't do so much work that you're exhausted tomorrow. Like the day before the test, like it's not the type of test where there are right and wrong answers in that, like if you're doing a history test, you can cram tonight and then that extra information might get you some extra marks tomorrow. But in the IELTS test, it's not really like that. It's based on a broader ability in vocab and grammar and the other areas. So it's not the type of test. IELTS is not the type of test that you can cram for. So instead of cramming, just make sure you're well rested, because you need a lot of focus, and the test itself is quite long. Doing writing and listening and reading all in the same day. So I would say make sure that you're well rested, and make sure that you have the energy you need for tomorrow. And also, best of luck with the test. Sci 4 writing module task 1. So I think at the moment it sounds like you're just new to the IELTS test. You probably just need to focus on improving your understanding of how the IELTS test is marked. Do some research, study the requirements, study what an essay should look like, study what information to include, what information not to include. So just generally what you want to do is learn how to write an essay first, and then you can practice after that. Arsh, sir, can you tell me how to learn vocabulary? What more I have in mind to ask is that, should I repeat vocab words over and over? So we talked about studying vocab already. Repeating the words over and over, is that to help you memorize it? I mean, if it works, then do it. If you find that repeating the words helps you memorize them, then that's a good idea. And if it doesn't help you, well, then don't do it. Different things work for different people. Some people like to write it out. Some people like to review it. Some people like to make like topic cards. Some people have phone apps that they can use while they're out and about. Some people, like you said, like to repeat it. Depends. Whatever works for you. As long as it's working, then do it. However, I'm a bit worried about fluency, particularly my fluency. I'm a bit worried about speaking, particularly my fluency, which stops me getting above 6.5. Yeah, well, I mean, you just have to do the best in the situation you're in. And like I said, to improve fluency, it's about speaking English as much as you can. So if you think your fluency isn't good enough, you should be practicing speaking more often. Okay, Mohammed, so we talked about your question already. Okay. Adil, sir, if we write words with like key advantage, biggest advantage, main advantage. Will the word advantage be counted as repetition? All these words are compound nouns, and these are different collocations. The word advantage would still be considered as the same word being used. Yeah, the collocations are different. Like that would be noticed, but advantage is definitely still the same word. But the thing is, if you don't know a synonym, if you don't know another word with the same meaning, well, then using the word advantage is what you should do. You know, there's no point in trying not to use the word if you need it. If you need it, use it. If you know a synonym, use the synonym. If you don't, use the word. It's not, you know, you're still trying to communicate. Like the main goal is communication. And then, like what I was talking to one of my students the other day, and this student was putting so much focus on range of vocabulary. For some reason, they got it into their head that range of vocabulary is the most important thing, and that, you know, they were putting range of vocab over everything else. So their main focus was always range of vocabulary. And what I said to him is this: it's like, right, so in the IELTS test, you're getting a score for fluency, vocab, grammar, pronunciation. So 25% for each one. And then for your vocab, this isn't exactly right, but about half of your vocab score is for range, and about half of your vocab score is for accuracy. So for students who are out there and they're putting all of their effort into range of vocab, everything, the main focus is range of vocab. Use every word I can think of, never use the same word again. I'm just trying everything. The biggest goal here is to use as many words as possible. But when you think of it, like, your range of vocab is only 12.5% of your score. So if you're putting 100% of your effort into range of vocab, and then you're ignoring other things like your task achievement, your coherence and cohesion, your accuracy of vocab, your grammar, you're not really spreading your attention evenly across where your scores are coming from. So is range of vocab important? Yes. Is it the most important thing? No. There are other things you also need to consider. So if you're super worried about range of vocab, what you should just ask yourself is, are you giving it too much attention? Are you giving an unfair amount of attention or an unreasonable amount of attention to the range of vocab? And if you are, well, then you need to probably reduce the range and focus more on how clearly are you communicating your ideas. That's what I would recommend. Riyadh, what is the major changes in the recent IELTS marking criteria? Negligible. The words have been changed. The requirements of the candidates isn't any different. So it's just clarity. It's just making them clearer and easier to understand. Cambridge is working towards replacing IELTS examiners with AI. Now, I don't think that's going to be happening very soon, but they are investing money in it. They want to have AI instead of IELTS examiners. So that time will come. And part of the change to the marking criteria is to make the language clearer, so that there's so that it's easier to that there's less ambiguity. I mean, IELTS examiners already understand it, and there's no difference. It's not like an essay that you wrote before the changes will get a lower score now, or that the essay you wrote before the changes will get a higher score now. There is no difference. There is no difference in that. The difference is in the wording, not in the scoring. So if you got a band 6.5 for your essay previously, that would still get a band 6.5 now. So the scores that you would get are the same. The requirements are the same. The wording is slightly different to make it a little bit less ambiguous, but it's nothing beyond that. There's nothing really for any of us to consider beyond the wording is different. What approach would you suggest for improving my speech speed over the next 2 months? So practice speaking. When you say speech speed, I mean, if you're speaking slowly, that's a problem. But you shouldn't try to speak quickly. That's not like speaking quick. Try that again. Speaking quickly isn't necessarily a good thing. You know, I have students who speak too quickly and I can't follow what they're saying because they speak so quickly. Like sometimes people will improve their score by slowing down. Now, if you're speaking slowly, that's bad, but you don't need to speak quickly. So if you're trying to speak quickly, don't do that. But if you are speaking slowly and you need to improve your speaking speed, then you need to practice speaking in English more often. And what happens is your ideas and the vocab, your mouth can find them faster. So it's how long does it take to find what you're looking for and then say it. So the length of time it takes to find the words should decrease. So you should be able to reduce the number of pauses and hesitations, but you shouldn't be aiming to speak quickly. That's not a requirement and not a good goal to have. Sally Man, hello from Afghanistan. Nice to have you here, Sally Man. I want to pass IELTS test. How can you please advise me? So I'll tell you what I do with the students on my course. Basically, student joins the course, I'll show them what to do, then they try to do it, and then I'll check their mistakes. I'll find their mistakes, tell them what their mistakes are. So that's kind of what you want to do. Is the first step is learn how to, like, let's say if we're talking about IELTS writing task 2, learn how to write a task 2 essay, then try to do it. Figure out what you've done wrong, learn from your mistakes. Try again, learn from your mistakes. Try again, learn from your mistakes. So that's essentially what you're doing. If you're asking me, it sounds like you're kind of earlier in the process. So you just need to kind of learn how to write a task 2 essay, learn the requirements of the IELTS test, and then just start practicing. I mean, essentially, if you can get feedback and someone can show you what your mistakes are, that's going to help you. But for now, you just need to learn how to do it. Hi, Prince. Lar is the best IELTS tutor I ever met. Thank you. You made me who I am today. Thank you, Prince. Riyadh, difference between adequacy and sufficiency in terms of lexical resource. I'll have to have a quick look at that now. So you need to look at the full sentence. So you're looking at the word sufficient, but it's not just the word sufficient. It says sufficient to do what? It's like band 5, resource sufficient to discuss familiar and unfamiliar topics, but there is limited flexibility. So sufficient to do what? Sufficient to discuss familiar and unfamiliar topics. 6, sufficient to discuss topics at length. So not just discuss them, but discuss them at length. So you're looking at, Riyadh, you're looking at individual words, but they don't really convey much meaning on their own. You need to look at the full sentence. So sufficient to do what? Adequate to do what? So the full sentence, you need to consider the full sentence, not just the individual word in the sentence. You need to take the meaning from the full description. Domenico, regardless of the language I speak, whether it's Italian or Spanish, I've always had a tendency to speak at a slower pace. It has become a habit for me. Well, I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't need to change. I mean, you know, if it's the wrong thing to do in English and it's the wrong thing to do in Italian, you know, like if you're doing something wrong when you speak Italian, that doesn't mean it's okay in English because you're doing it wrong when you're speaking in Italian or Spanish. So if you speak slowly and it's affecting your score, you will still need to overcome that problem. You know, unfortunately, whether it is the way you naturally speak or not, you know, if it's stopping you getting your score, it's something that you're going to have to work on. Okay, so we still have some time left. If you guys have questions, go ahead. While I'm waiting for you, let me just share my link for my courses and my one-on-one services. So if you want one-on-one support, there's a link there. Or you can just send me an email, lar@completetestsuccess.com, and I'll talk to you about that. Okay, Taban. Hello, I did IELTS, got 4. I want to do it again, but I'm afraid it will be less than 6. What should I do? So Taban, you have to ask yourself, what have you done to improve your score? Have you worked on improving your vocab? Have you worked on improving your grammar? Like the IELTS is it's a very accurate test. I mean, the reason that it's accepted around the world by so many institutions is that it's really good at checking your score. So, if you got a band 4 and you haven't improved your English, there's a very good chance you'll get the same score again. So if you've taken action, if you've done something to help you improve your scores, there's a very good chance it will improve. If you haven't, there's a very good chance it will stay the same. So you need to take action. If you're doing something to improve your scores will improve. If you're doing nothing, your scores won't improve. It's as simple as that, really. Mandeep, good afternoon, sir. Please explain, how can I use idiomatic language to get a higher score? So just phrasal verbs and like informal language, colloquial phrases, those types of things. Don't try to learn idioms. A lot of candidates make that mistake. They learn idioms, but the examiner's not looking for idioms. They sound unnatural. They're used incorrectly. just use normal phrasal verbs, colloquial language. But like I said earlier, like just study the vocab. Like if this is your level of vocab, well then just build on top of that. Like don't start like cherry picking language that you think sounds good. Stay working on the foundation that you have. If you're down here, continue learning the basic easy words. Don't skip the easy words and aim for the higher stuff. Stay at your level and build up on top of that. And that's much better. Band 8 grammar, wide range of structures means, should I go for an EO? Wide range of structures. So it's like different tenses, different complex structures, using what are they called? Conditionals, using modals, just using all the different types of grammar to clearly communicate your points. Should I go for an EOR, particularly in writing, as I'm missing out on my desired score by half band? Not necessarily. If you got a higher score in a previous test and you feel like your current attempt was just as good or better, then yes. If you never got 5 band, half a band higher previously, then there's no reason to believe that your score should be better. And of course, you want it to be better. I understand that. But going for an EOR because you want it to be better isn't a good idea. You should go for an EOR because you have some reason to believe that it should be better. So you should have some evidence or some proof or some knowledge telling you that it should be higher, not just you want it, but that for some reason you think it is. Mohammed, I'm lower in IELTS reading. How to improve? I got 6 in speaking, writing. You need to analyze your incorrect answers and figure out what you're doing wrong. Are you doing anything to reduce your? Are you making any mistakes? What question types are you getting wrong? Is it your vocab? Is it your spelling? Is it? You basically, you need to analyze your mistakes. So after you do a practice reading test, sit down, look at every incorrect answer that you chose, figure out why you chose the incorrect answer. And once you figure that out, you'll know what your mistake is and you'll understand how to improve it. So analyzing your incorrect answers is definitely a solution. How to ensure a wide range of vocabulary, fluent, flexibility, convey precise meaning in task 2. Well, what you have to do is just do the best you can with the vocab you have. And if your vocab isn't good enough, you need to continue studying vocab. Like, you shouldn't try to use vocab in a certain way. You shouldn't try to do something with your vocab. What you should be doing is focus on clear communication. If you're if you're taking your attention away from clear communication, then you're not going to get a good score. If you're trying to use vocab, if you're going in there going like, okay, I have to use a wide range of vocab, you'll probably end up with a lower score than you would get otherwise. Like the highest score you'll get is saying, how can I communicate as clearly as possible to the reader? And using the vocab that allows me to communicate as clearly as possible to the reader. That's what you should be trying to do. If you're not doing that, you're probably going to get a lower score than you're capable of. But if you're doing that and you're not getting the score you need, well, then you need to improve your vocab level. You need to sit down and you need to study vocab. So it's pretty much as simple as that. Okay, that seems to be the last question for today. So we'll leave it there. If you're joining me for my free live feedback lessons, you'll find the schedule. Just log into my platform. I'll have another live stream next week. And like I said, if you want one-on-one support, just send me an email here. Yeah, that's it for now. Take care of yourselves. Some of you said you have tests coming up soon, so best of luck to you. And talk to you next time. Bye for now. See you all.